Welcome to the Jeff Miller Show. Each week, Jeff Miller of the Jeff Miller Consulting Alliance talks with Podcast Village host Charlie Birney about trends in business, consulting, and much more. The Consulting Alliance offers strategic counsel and tactical support to businesses, corporations, and nonprofit organizations in the Washington, D.C. area and beyond.
Jeff Miller, how are you this afternoon?
Charlie, I'm great. How you doing?
Looking forward to this all day as I drudge away on clipping. My intern didn't show, so I've been doing all the clipping today, and it's just nice to have you in on a sunny,
I was going to
sunny Thursday afternoon.
Blue sky, white clouds, no rain.
As my father would say, there's that strange yellow thing in the sky. I don't know what it is, but I like it. So sorry for the hiatus, but here we are for Series 2 of the Jeff Miller Show, and it's nice to have you back in the studio.
Always good to be back with you, Charlie.
So what's going on in the wide world of the Jeff Miller Consulting Alliance?
So yesterday morning I had the opportunity to do a presentation to the Rockville Chamber of Commerce, their monthly Good Morning Rockville series that they do. And I decided to do the presentation on mindful leadership. As you know,
great.
I've been thinking and talking and writing about it of late.
Yeah.
And it was good. It was interesting. People were really receptive to it. It was the first time I was doing it. Mm-hmm. So, kind of worked out the kinks, but they weren't necessarily aware of that. So it was a good free-flowing thing, discussions, conversations. And afterwards, I was talking to somebody who, had approached me and was curious about coaching and who's my ideal client, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, my standard answer to that is I'm always interested in working with people, owners, salespeople who understand the importance of self-investing, investing in themselves and in their business in order to grow themselves and their business. Mm-hmm. Which is why through the years I've been able to work with a wide range of industry. Right. Because I've never been pegged into, I'm looking for engineering firms.
And we've talked about that. Yeah, sure.
And then it occurred to me as I was driving back and reaffirmed when I was having a conversation with my business coach, there's something about being desperate and being hungry. And what I'm finding, what I've found and continue to find as I mature in the business, this is my 14th year, and the kind of people that I'm attracted to and who are attracted to me are people who are hungry. Mm-hmm. Not desperate. It's a curious difference between the two. If you're hungry to get to that next level, if you're hungry to increase your knowledge base, then you come to it with a different framework and mind frame.
Different urgency.
Different urgency than if you're desperate. Because desperation, and this is not a judgment that I'm making, but through experience, there's a certain amount of panic associated with it.
Sure.
Stress that also comes with it. Mm-hmm. And for the work that I do and the style of my coaching, I just don't do desperate. Because we can't get to the places that we want to go as quickly as we want to get there. And if you're desperate, you tend to maybe give up in the middle. Mm-hmm. If you're hungry, baby,
there's a lot of byproducts of desperation.
If you're hungry, man, you just want it. I can't get there fast enough.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was it was an interesting couple of days, and being able to finally articulate it as to what is that, So, yeah.
But it's interesting. I'm going to throw you a curveball, if I may. It's interesting to hear you talk about speaking with a presentation where you may or may not have been working out the flow of it all. Mm-hmm. And I was just listening to a host of podcasts. One of them is comedy related, and they were talking about crowd work. I don't know if you've ever heard the expression crowd work. Well, this is a stand-up expression, so I'm gonna compare you to a stand-up comedian.
Okay.
So
there's some that would agree with you
but I think it's an apt analogy because you're looking at, how are they responding? Are they getting it? You referred to, whether they knew about it or leading them into mindfulness. Mm-hmm. So you're probably gauging the crowd and looking at how they're responding to what you're saying, the facial expressions, the attention span. I think that's the same thing that the comedians are referring to with crowd work.
Yeah, well, I think
how you work a room. If your established jokes fall flat, then you've got to reload and move on.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. When I'm doing any kind of presentation or team exercise or workshop, I'm always looking at the crowd because I want to see, or the participants, because I want to see where are we connecting and where aren't we connecting. And there have been times where I'll stop in the middle and say, I'm sensing that.
Right.
And so talk to me. Tell me what you need to hear differently.
Yeah.
And where it's most pronounced is the work that I do up at the prison.
Right.
Because if I'm doing these workshops, the 3-series workshops that I do up there, I know immediately if I'm connecting or not. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not, again, I'll stop and say, hey, do I need to say that in a different way? Mm-hmm. Or play back to me what you just heard, because I'm kind of sensing that I might have miscommunicated it. So there's a lot of,
it's a face-to-face part of mindfulness.
Yeah.
Okay, so taking it back to mindfulness.
That's a great point.
Crowd work maybe is the stand-up comedian synonym for mindfulness, or a part of mindfulness, the communication part, because you are really looking for that response and reaction, and how do I cultivate the right ones?
Again, great point. Mindful leadership is all about being in the moment.
Right.
And as I've said earlier on earlier podcasts, we used to call that be present. Mm-hmm. But if you're not present,
the precious present.
And if I tell you to be present, you got no clue of what I'm talking about. Right? I'm not present. What does that mean, be present?
Yeah.
But if I stop you and say, just stop, look around, I'd like you to notice 3 things in this room that you haven't noticed before.
Yeah.
By definition, you have to be then in the moment, because I'm looking around.
Yeah, I've got a Charlie story about that. My grandmother, who was wonderful, my father's mother, she used to say, I don't know if my brothers remember this, we would be driving somewhere and she'd say, how many things do you think you noticed? Because what used to happen to her is her brothers would challenge her how many things she noticed, an aspect of mindfulness. Mm-hmm. And it made me always look at the journey differently. Am I noticing how much can I absorb productively in a positive way? And sometimes I'll say to my children without testing them, because boy, they're 16. But did you notice X, or did you see that we just passed a XYZ, and being mindful,
Yeah, well, and sometimes I'm accused of being crotchety, in which I am sometimes.
No, not possible.
I think that with all of this technology, people don't look up.
Well, that's very true.
And especially with young kids.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll be driving down the highway and we'll see a family van, and I always look over because part of me misses those days when the girls were little.
And you see the kids in the back with their heads plowed down.
Yeah, and they're looking at it, they're watching a movie, or they're playing a game, and all that stuff that's being missed.
Well, and I don't know what happens, because my kids are 16 and they haven't started driving yet, but just as a silly byproduct of that comment, my daughter has been looking out the window because she gets car sick. My son's been playing video games, so when he starts driving, he's not going to know where he is. He literally doesn't recognize the landscape. He'll say, "Oh, we're there," and I'll be like, "How can you not know?" Now, when I was a kid, I didn't have a smartphone, or I couldn't read in the car because I made me car sick. So I was looking out the window, and speaking of mindful, I remember I was into codes, and there, those little green things on the highway with all the numbers on them. I would wait for them and then write it all down and decode what it meant. It was every 10th of a mile there were one of these, and these little things meant that. So a different kind of mindfulness, maybe stupid mindfulness.
Well, there are always pluses and minuses, and every generation looks at the next one and says, well, we used to do it better this way or that way.
Does, yeah.
It brings to mind, as you know, we lived in Brooklyn, and I used to travel into Manhattan frequently, even as a younger kid, but the subway was the mode of transportation.
Right.
And one of my favorite things to do was just to look out the window.
Yeah.
In complete darkness, right? Because you're going through the tunnels, but then you kind of see the light coming, and
the flashes.
It's just, there's something about that art of paying attention, I think. And it's easy.
Yeah.
I use the word art, but it's real. It's an easy thing. It's accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I've been thinking about a little bit, Charlie.
How did they respond?
Oh, it was great. It was a great presentation. A lot of positive feedback.
What happens at the prison when you're there? They're really listening. I mean, they're captive audience.
Oh,
sorry.
They are captive.
Sorry for the pun.
Absolutely.
It's not really intentional, but I couldn't let it go. I mean, they'll interrupt you, will they, and say, "But I didn't understand this," or will they just listen, or how do they? When you're looking at them, it's a different kind of a stare back you're getting, right?
Yeah, and they're different. When I'm doing a presentation out here, I'm dealing with business owners. I'm dealing with people who are relating to their environment very, very differently. So with the prison population, when I work with them, the content is the same. The examples that I use are different. And I'll get their attention very quickly by saying, look, just so that you know, I'm a Jewish kid from Brooklyn. I'm a business coach. It's my own business. I'm doing this on my dime. So if you're here, I need you to tell me that you're willing to work with me and be present. Or not be present, but be active in the conversation. And if you don't understand, stop me. But don't sit here and blank out on me. So can you raise your hand who agrees with that?
Sure.
So once I get that agreement, whenever I need to, I just come back to that agreement. And it's Charlie, you're looking at me funny.
Yeah.
What aren't you getting?
Yeah.
What aren't you getting?
And you just reach out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a running dialogue on mindfulness, and I think we should just always continue that as one of our, what examples of mindfulness have we seen in your professional and my unprofessional opinion?
Well, that's the thing about mindful leadership that really draws me into it and speaks to me, because by definition, you have to be mindful all the time.
Right.
And that's not to say that at times you don't, obviously, but to really embrace it, you need to be paying attention always and listening always and asking the right questions and not talking more than you're listening.
Yes.
And these are all things that the key thing, one of the keys, is to allow yourself to be humble.
Yeah.
Humility. What don't I know? Charlie, what can you teach me? That's what leadership is about. That's what mindful leadership is about. So it's about
and humility is sadly lacking in a lot of everyday life, and it's this digital identity that we have that seems to be sucking some of that away, or at least leaching a little bit of away.
Yeah.
I don't know how to connect that dot, but I think I'm right. So
I think you are. And the last thing I'll say about leadership, about mindful leadership for today. And I've referenced Professor Langer in previous podcasts, and she's the social psychologist up at Harvard that's done all these studies and has studied this for the last 40 years or so. And she says we talk about life-work balance, and that by definition will lead to mindlessness and will lead to more tension and stress in the family and in the workplace. Because as I've said before, and I did this yesterday at the presentation, I asked them for a volunteer. I said, just stand up and just stand up, balance on your right foot.
Right. Okay.
And how long can you do that for?
Not very long.
It's pretty precarious.
Yeah.
So instead of balancing, we think of it as integrating. Integrate who you are all the time in whatever situation you're in. Now, clearly, we wear different hats.
Yep.
But imagine in the workplace, if you could create an environment where people are able to be who they are, imagine how the tension and the stress levels go down. I don't have to pretend. I'm your boss, but I don't have to pretend. I don't have to wear a different identity. We just need to establish a relationship that, you respect me and I respect you and understand that. Okay. But I'm me. When I'm talking with you, when I go home and talk with Betsy, when I'm talking to the kids, when I'm doing a presentation, when I'm with clients, my goal now is always to be mindful and always to understand the importance of being able to relate to one another as one another.
That's a good quick check when I'm next feeling super anxious about one of my many issues. I will try to think mindful. How can I be relaxed and mindful? And
well, interestingly,
I'm going to try that.
Interestingly, there are people who will describe mindfulness as being the post-meditative state. So if you want to, if meditating is important, which to me it is, I've got a practice I do every day.
Right.
the journey that takes you to should be the place of mindfulness.
And that's why I refer to it, because it seems like they're all incredibly supportive. Well, that's awesome, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Charlie.
And we will see you next week.
Yep.
One of these days.
Next Thursday.
We're establishing it.
We'll get it nailed down.
All right, my friend. Have a wonderful day. Say hi to Betsy for me, and I will talk to you soon.
Will do, Charlie. Always good.
The Jeff Miller Show is brought to you by Podcast Village, located at Launch Workplaces in Gaithersburg, Maryland. If you would like to contact Jeff or Charlie, please tweet to @Podcast Village or @JeffMillConsult. You can also email Jeff at jeff@jmconsultingalliance.com. What story would you like to tell?